Dark Ranger Marksman Hunter was hit hard by the 12.05 class tuning, taking a massive nerf in PvP combat. But if you still want to play Dark Ranger, let's bring it back to life, this time with Beast Mastery. Unlike Marksman Hunter, Beast Mastery does not have something like precise shots that directly increases the damage of Black Arrow. So you're not trying to build around one massive Black Arrow hit. Instead, Beast Mastery plays around frequent pressure windows created by short Bestial Wrath cooldown, and within those windows, Withering Fire becomes your primary Black Arrow damage amplifier. When Withering Fire is active, Black Arrow fires multiple shots instead of one. Inside this window, Black Arrow moves much higher in priority. The important part is that you do not want to enter this window randomly. You want to prepare for it by having kill command ready, your pet already connected to the target, and ideally Black Arrow either available or easy to generate. This is also where Wailing Arrow becomes important, because Wailing Arrow can guarantee a Black Arrow, which means you can use it near the end of the Withering Fire window to create one more Black Arrow before the buff expires. But even inside the Withering Fire window, your highest priority spell is still Kill Command, because this is still Beast Mastery Hunter. Your strongest version of the Kill Command is the one empowered by Nature's Ally, which increases its damage by 30%. And during this window, it becomes even more important because your Dark Hound and Animal Companion are also adding damage around the same timing. After that, your next priority is Black Arrow. Then you use Barb Shot and Wailing Arrow, and Wailing Arrow should always be used before the Bestial Wrath window ends because you want its damage and silence to land and generate one more guaranteed Black Arrow. So the opener usually looks something like this. Throughout this entire sequence, Kill Command should always be used with Nature's Ally active, because that is your strongest version of the ability. The goal of this opener is to enter Bestial Wrath fully prepared, maintain Kill Command pressure at all times, fit Black Arrow inside the Withering Fire window, and use Wailing Arrow before the window ends so you can immediately follow it with one more Black Arrow. If you're looking for a reliable player-to-player marketplace, I want to quickly mention today's sponsor, Player Auctions. Player Auctions is an independent player-to-player marketplace with a long history and significant scale across multiple games including World of Warcraft. It has been around for years with a large network of buyers and sellers and a platform system that has been tested over time. So if you need extra support with your in-game progress, Player Auctions gives you a place to connect with other players through a more structured marketplace. The platform also uses Player Guardian, which means the seller is not paid until the buyer confirms that the order has been delivered. This adds an extra layer of security compared to direct arrangements. You can check out the link in the description or search for Player Auctions WoW on Google. One important thing to know about Bestial Wrath is that your bleed application depends on what your pets are actually attacking when you press it. If you swap targets and press Bestial Wrath too early, the third pet from your Apex talent can apply its bleed to the new target. But your main pet and Animal Companion may still apply their bleeds to the old target because they have not fully swapped yet. This is a big problem because you're not getting all three bleed effects on a target you actually want to kill. So before you press Bestial Wrath after swapping target, you should first force your pets onto the new target with Kill Command. Once your pets are connected, then you press Bestial Wrath. Also make sure your pet is not crowd controlled because if your pet is stunned, rooted or stuck, your Bestial Wrath window loses a lot of its pressure. So the rule is simple. Target swap first, Kill Command to connect your pets, then Bestial Wrath. For race, the best horde choice is still Orc because hardiness gives you stun reduction, which is extremely valuable in PvP, where getting locked down often means losing the game. Blood Fury gives you extra octet power that scales well with both your pet damage and your Dark Ranger abilities, making it the safest all-around option. For Alliance, Night Elf is the strongest overall option because Shadow Meld gives you control over targeting, allowing you to avoid incoming crowd control, drop combat, or deny key abilities, and this kind of control is extremely valuable for hunters who rely on positioning and timing to survive. Another solid Alliance option is Human because Will to Survive effectively gives you an extra trinket, which can free up your actual trinket slot for more aggressive choices, and this can be especially useful in PvP when you just want to do more damage. If you care less about optimization and more about the Dark Ranger identity, Undead fits this build extremely well because Will of the Forsaken helps you break fear effects and stay aggressive. And thematically it aligns perfectly with the Dark Ranger playstyle even if it is not always the strongest numerical choice.
The Horde is nothing.
With Dark Ranger, your overall pressure is still coming from Beast Mastery's core kit, but now you gain access to a silence through Wailing Arrow and an additional pressure layer through Black Arrow. Because of this, your stat priority does not shift as much as you might expect, since you're still relying on Beast Mastery's core pressure to set up those kill windows, And that means versatility remains your most important stat, followed by mastery. Mastery increases your pet damage and your shot damage, which means it affects almost everything this build cares about. Your main pet, animal companion, your summon dire beast, your dark hound, and even your black arrow. It is a stat that strengthens both sides of the build at the same time, the Beast Mastery Pressure Engine and the Dark Ranger Damage Package. That is why after versatility, Mastery should be your highest priority stat. Haste remains valuable because it improves the flow of your rotation, gives you more consistent pressure, and helps you maintain frenzy stacks more easily, which indirectly supports your overall damage profile. But it does not directly increase the impact of your Dark Ranger abilities. Critical Strike is the least important stat in this setup because while it can increase the damage of Wailing Arrow and Black Arrow, it does not help you reach the pressure threshold required to make those abilities meaningful. Reaching the pressure threshold consistently is more important than having occasional burst spikes. For your pet, Whiptail is one of the better choices for this build because it gives you both consistent utility and reliable uptime in PvP. Whiptail comes from Voice Storm and is easy to obtain, and more importantly, it has Serrated Strike, which applies a mortal wounds effect. On top of that, it has Shadow Jump, which allows your pet to teleport behind the target and apply an 80% slow for 1 second. Shadow Jump helps your pet reconnect instantly, which means your kill command, your pet damage, and your Dark Ranger interactions do not get delayed. By default, Whiptail is a Ferocity pet, but that is not locked in. You can always change your pet specialization through a stable master. You may also see some Beast Mastery hunters using Devil Sours, and while they definitely look cool, I would not recommend them purely for performance. The reason is that their Mortal Wounds ability, Monstrous Bite, has a longer cooldown than Whiptail's Serrated Strike, which makes Whiptail the more reliable option for maintaining healing reduction in PvP. For tier set, Beast Mastery gets a 2-piece bonus that increases the direct damage of Bestial Wrath by 25%, and a 4-piece bonus that summons a Dire Beast for 8 seconds whenever you activate Bestial Wrath. However, like most tier set effects, these bonuses are reduced in PvP, which means the actual impact is significantly lower than what the tooltip suggests. Because of that, I would generally recommend going for the 2-piece bonus only, since it still gives you a small amount of extra value during your Bestial Wrath windows without forcing you to sacrifice too much versatility. The main strength of this build comes from Wailing Arrow because it gives you access to a silence, which is something Beast Mastery normally does not have. And this allows you to shut down casters and create sudden kill windows that the enemy cannot easily respond to. Another strength of this build is that it performs surprisingly well into plate classes, because a lot of your burst window is not pure physical damage. Kill command is still physical damage, but Wailing Arrow, Black Arrow, and Dark Hound deal shadow damage, and Bloodshed during Bestial Wrath adds bleed damage, which means a large portion of your pressure is not being reduced by armor. This is why the build can feel much better into warriors and paladins than normal Beast Mastery, because during Bestial Wrath you're stacking shadow damage, bleed damage, dark hound pressure, and Wailing Arrow silence at the same time, which gives the target much less room to recover. But the same ability is also the main weakness of the build, because Wailing Arrow requires you to cast, which means it is the only moment in your rotation where you are vulnerable to crowd control or pressure while trying to execute your setup. Another weakness, and this is not specific to Dark Ranger but to Beast Mastery in general, is that you are still a pet based spec, which means on maps with elevation like Warsong Gulch or Temple of Kot Mogu, your pet can take inefficient pathing and lose uptime by running around terrain instead of directly reaching the target. Dark Ranger helps mitigate this slightly because you have additional source of damage outside of your pet, but since a large portion of your damage still comes from your pet, you will inevitably lose pressure in those situations. Dark Ranger Beast Mastery Hunter is fundamentally different from Dark Ranger Marksmith Hunter, because this build is not trying to make Black Arrow do all the work. Normal Beast Mastery feels like a hunter fighting alongside wild beasts as a guardian of nature, but Dark Ranger changes that identity by adding Black Arrow, Wailing Arrow, and Dark Hound Summon on top of the same pet-based engine, making the spec feel much more like a shadow-infused ranger than a traditional beast handler. Since this version does not have the same massive Black Arrow burst profile that Marksmith had, you're not playing for one enormous hit, but instead you are using the Bestial Wrath every 30 seconds to create repeated pressure windows where your main pet, animal companion, Dark Hound, kill command, and shadow abilities all stack together. This is why the build feels especially strong in small scale fights like 1v1s. Because of that, Dark Ranger Beast Mastery Hunter can also work very well as a battleground defender, where the goal is not always to land one perfect burst combo, but to survive and hold the ground. That's all, and don't forget the comments.